So this is going to be the first time we have done this format. I'd like to introduce this amazing man. He's an investigator, he's a researcher, he's an educator, he's a demonologist. For real. Let us welcome to the stage here at MegaCon Orlando 2024, Bill Slevin.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to try something interesting. So normally we've done many panels together over the years, Bill and I, but it's more like a question-answer kind of a thing. And then last year, Bill was, so you guys do like these theatrical things? I'm like, yes, that's what we do. And did you ever think maybe doing some of my stories? And that was a tasty little morsel. So Bill has sent us a number of his stories, and we have 3 in particular we're going to be doing for you today, including his very first case. Yes, let me hear that better. Let's try that again. His very first case. Yes, and it is an ooh, I will tell you that. So I'll be doing readings of these. Now remember, when I'm saying I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about Bill. Because I don't do this stuff, he does. I just fake it. And then in between, we're going to get to ask questions. So you're going to hear actually what happened, and these are 100% true. This is not a fiction. This is not doing Edgar Allan Poe. This is, well, he's real too, but no. But these are true-to-life stories from Bill's life. This is the man who went through these things. So let us begin at the beginning, as they say. Bill Slevin, this is your life. My first case, my journey begins. This is what everything had been leading up to. So many days and nights spent studying and researching. Solo investigations, countless cemeteries, and abandoned buildings. Everything was leading up to this day, a day I've been waiting many years for. My first residential case. It would also be the day that would change my life forever and haunt me till the day I die. It was June 1st, 1989, and I received a call from a good friend of mine that knew a group of investigators who were short one person for their upcoming residential investigation. They had asked him if he knew anyone or would want to come with them because one of their team members was sick and would not be able to be part of this investigation. He told them he was definitely not interested, but that he had a friend who had been studying a lot about ghosts, but had never been on a residential investigation before. The team founder, Mike, asked me if I would be interested in helping and getting some experience at the same time. I quickly and gladly agreed. I never thought I would get to do a residential case. They told me the address and time they wanted me to meet them, and I anxiously awaited for that day. My mind was going 100 miles a minute. June 4th, 1989, finally came, and I pulled up to this house. I was expecting some spooky, creepy-looking place, but this was a 2-floor, normal-looking home from any neighborhood in New Jersey. I got out of the car and walked over to meet the team leader, Mike, and one of his members, John. They mentioned this was their first time at the actual location, as they've only talked with the client by phone, so they weren't 100% sure what to expect. The only person that lived at this house was a sweet older lady. If I remember correctly, she was 83, quite full of life, but you can see the fear in her. They explained that all of a sudden she had been experiencing things that scared her, things she had never experienced before. She would constantly see shadows out of the corner of her eye, and would hear someone that sounded like her own mother calling her name. Oh, good, it's only on one side. She also noticed items in the house being moved, finding her keys in the kitchen when she knew she remembered putting them in the foyer when she walked in the door. She started to think maybe she was going a little crazy, perhaps senile, but then it started to progress, and she would see things move and fall off of the counter, items coming out of the cabinets, falling to the floor. Then she started to hear a very evil voice, as she described it. At this point, I was learning about people's abilities as psychics and mediums, but I had no idea what an empath was, or that I was one. I just knew at times I felt strange and uncomfortable. At this point, the sun was going down as we walked up to the house. The woman, Mary, was already out of the house walking to us. She was very anxious to have us there, but also a little scared of us, I think. Or maybe it was now real, and she was scared about what we may find. She told us she turned all the lights off already and that she was going to stay next door with her neighbor until we were done. Now my nerves were getting to me a bit, as this was the first time I would be investigating someone's home, and also with people I didn't know. I wanted to do a good job and hopefully help this lady, but I also wanted to impress Mike and John so they would maybe ask me back for another investigation, as it was hard to find people who actually did this. We walked up to the front door, opened it, and walked inside. We were inside a foyer area of the home with a room to our right, stairs going up to the left, and the living room straight ahead. We stood there for a minute, and then, without saying a word, all three of us ran out of the door onto the front lawn, gagging and nauseous. I had never felt like this before. The three of us sat for a moment, gathered ourselves, and headed back in for another try. This time it was different. We smelled nothing, and nothing was getting any of us sick. So we started to make our way straight ahead into the living room. John was on my right, and he was running the video camera, which back then was not very small. It was a very large camera that he had mounted on his right shoulder. Mike was on my left with an old cassette tape recorder. As we stood there for about 3 minutes, just taking in the energy of the room, I started to feel extremely uncomfortable. The air felt heavy to me, and I became angry. I had no idea what I was feeling and why, but I did know something was about to happen. Then we heard this god-awful growl as the room turned cold and John screamed so loud and threw his camera lens to the floor, not caring at all about destroying it. We threw on the lights, and he was screaming and clawing at the top of his shirt. We ran over to help him, and we pulled his shirt off, still screaming, and tried to reach his back. As he turned away from us, we saw what he was screaming about. And I think Mike and I stood frozen for a few seconds. John had 3 razor-thin scratch marks down his back, running from the base of his neck all the way down his back to the bottom of his spine. We just stared for a minute. I have never seen anything like this. The scratches were as if someone took a razor blade down his back, perfect, and bleeding. At this point, we still were lost at what just happened, but we knew we had to get out of that house and get John some medical attention. We stood outside, catching our breath. After arguing with John, who was too scared to go to the hospital, afraid that if they asked what happened, he would be locked up. At this point, he put his shirt back on carefully, and we went next door to get Mary. She was surprised that we were so fast and actually looked relieved until we told her the news that something was not right, and we needed additional help to figure this out. We convinced her she should not stay in the house as it was too dangerous for her health. We cautiously helped her get some things and helped her next door to stay with her neighbor for a few days. They told me they believed this was a rare demonic case and that there is no way we could handle this, so they needed to get help from the clergy. I could not believe that on my first ever residential case, it was turning out to be a dangerous, possible demonic one. The drive home was long, and my mind was racing with so many questions. Why was this happening to this nice old lady? What did we smell at the beginning that made us sick? What was it trying to tell us? What was that growl that happened right before John screamed? But the biggest and most mind-boggling question I was asking over and over was, why did it attack John and not Mike or me? I sat by the phone, waiting to hear from someone about the case. I was so interested in what was to come next. And finally, I received a call from Mike saying they have a priest coming to bless the house and deliver the minor rite of exorcism to help clear the house. But unfortunately, their other teammate was better and wanted to be back on the case. They thanked me for helping that night and said they would contact me if they needed someone in the future. I was disappointed, but I'm still grateful that I got this experience. As far as I know, the blessing worked just fine and everything had stopped. But after a few months, I lost touch with them and never heard anything about the case after that. This case will forever live on in my memory as one of the most frightening nights, but rewarding at the same time. And this was really my big push into becoming a paranormal investigator and later a demonology specialist. Most people would have run for their lives after something like this and never do it again, but not me. It made me that much more curious. I wanted to know more. Now, don't get me wrong. I was scared shitless in that house. You never forget anything you experience on a demonic case. It actually haunts you forever. The end. Now remember, that's not me. That's this gentleman over here. So we want to ask questions in between each of these. We're going to learn about these cases, but we want to ask questions. So I'm going to ask for the first one. It's a clarity question. So you talked about blessings. You talked about blessings of the house. Later on in some of the other stories, you talk about blessing the personnel who are going into the house. And you also talk about the minor rite of exorcism. Can you help define that for us a little bit and what their uses are?
Yeah, so there's different things when it comes to demonic cases. They can do full exorcism, which is when the person is actually possessed. But if it's not at that stage yet and it's in the oppression stage and it's just in the house, they will a lot of times come and do a minor rite of exorcism, which is more like a glorified blessing. It's not just they come in and bless you. They do a full, it's about maybe 20 minutes long, but they might do it 14 times while you're in there. They have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until they feel it is gone. It's a little different than the full exorcism can take hours, days, sometimes months or years. But this was just something that I wish I would have been there for this, but it was like I said, it wasn't my case. They brought me in on it. But it's a little different. I was involved in them later on, which you'll hear, which I got to witness it. But it was something to see because, like I said, it was my first case. And these type of cases are very rare. I've done close to 1,000 residential cases in the 35 years I've been doing this. And I've had maybe 7 proven demonic cases and maybe 10 or 15 others that we weren't sure of. So I get called in to actually help determine if they're demonic.
Nice. I got an odd question, and it came out of our panel yesterday. So, religion. The blessing of the individuals going in, the blessing of the house. What if somebody is an atheist? What if somebody is agnostic? What if they don't believe in that particular religion? I'm going in and, I study Islam, and instead there's a Catholic priest there. Right. How does that work for the person who is either secular or a non-believer or a believer in a different religion?
Right. Well, it's a little tricky sometimes because I was raised Catholic. I studied Catholic demonology. And a lot of people believe that only a Catholic priest can perform an exorcism. But almost in every religion, they have some sort of exorcist. Jewish faith doesn't believe in demons. They believe in divics, which are evil spirits. So it depends. It's kind of specific to each case. If the person doesn't mind, whoever comes in just wants to get rid of it, a lot of times, like for me, it will be called in with a Catholic priest. But if they specifically do not want that or they don't believe that and they want somebody of their faith in there, then we will call on somebody that has that, either from my team or somebody we know that can come and help. It's kind of tricky. Some of them, even if they're an atheist or whatever, they're not going to believe anything in a way.
Right.
It's not really on them. It's on us fighting it for them.
Nice.
Because they're in a state where they can't fight it. So they need people to help fight it out. So if we believe this, our faith is what's going to pull it out, no matter what.
So the recent film, which was not very good, in my personal opinion, The Exorcist, they had multiple religions there during the exorcism. Is that more common than we think?
Yeah. I mean, it's common, but it is mostly Catholic when it comes to exorcisms.
Nice.
But again, it's depending on the case.
Bravo. Any questions for Bill on this first case? We can ask questions in between all of them. Yes, right over here.
How do you determine whether or not an entity is demonic?
Nice.
If it's demonic?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways we do it. First, we do a lot of talking to the people. We sit down with them. We talk face to face. We learn everything about them, and we study them. We watch their eyes. We watch their movements. We watch their reactions to things. Then, with a spirit, you can go in and cleanse the house and get rid of the spirit. With a demon, it's not like that. we have to use religious provocation to provoke them. Pull out a cross, bless them with holy water, say a prayer. It will make them come out and react. So we may pull out a cross, but we also test. We may pull out a bottle that says holy water and bless them with it, and it's tap water to see their reaction. If they're, it's burning, and it's tap water, we know either they're playing us or maybe they have a mental illness. You know, so there's a very fine line between a possession and a mental illness too. So, and it can be both. So it's very particular. We have a lot of actual tests that we do. They'll bless with oil. There's a lot of different things we do. It takes a while. It's not like a 5-minute thing. It takes a while to really study them because you want to make sure, because if they have a mental illness and somebody starts a minor rite of exorcism on them, you could damage them. Because what we're doing is not going to fix their illness, and now they're going to think they're possessed. Right. So you could really, really damage them. So it's a very tricky process, and you need a few different people in there to make sure, because we all can make mistakes. You know.
Bravo. Any other questions on the first one? Yeah, come right over here.
Did you ever figure out why that one guy was getting attacked?
I wish I didn't. It wasn't my case, you know. And one thing I want to point out what he was reading, if that happened, this was in 1989.
Yes.
If that happened today with a team I didn't know, I would not believe it unless I knew them very, very well because of TikTok and YouTube and everything. I would not believe that was real. But back then, nobody was talking about that. He would not even go to the hospital. You know, he did not want to, because people back then would think you were crazy. My own family would have thought I was crazy if I told them what I did.
Yeah. And when you think of it, that's 40 years ago or so, right? The world has changed and things have normed in very interesting ways when it comes to the paranormal. Now it's accepted. Back then, you were looked at as a loon when you believed in this kind of stuff. You know, it was fascinating.
And I work in a psychiatric facility. I'm an IT director, but I work in a psychiatric facility. So I've learned a lot about addiction and mental illness and everything, which helps.
Take one more question, only because we want to get to the other stories. I'm going to get you next. I'm going to get this person now, if that's okay. Yeah, I'm going to get you first. Yes, go for it.
Okay. How did you feel after the first encounter with it? Like, right after the team and you guys left the house and you were driving home, how did you feel other than maybe shaken up? Were you, like, maybe excited? Like, not excited.
At the very beginning?
Yeah, at the very beginning. No,
so,
at
like,
the end.
at the end.
At the end. On your home.
I had a very mixed. I was feeling very strange as I said, I didn't know what an empath was back then, and I didn't know I was one. I just knew I would go in places, even like family parties and stuff, and I would feel emotions of people. I didn't know. I felt very strange when he came out of there, but like he was reading with that, I had so many questions. Like the main thing really was, why did it attack him? I didn't know anything about protection back then. I went into this house like, hey, yeah, this is gonna be fun, you know. So I had a very mixed, you know, luckily it wasn't something that came after me or came back with me and set with me, but it is something you'll never ever forget when you see these things. Those scratches were like razor blades, and it was not through his shirt. His shirt was not touched. They were just under there. So you have a mix of emotions. I'll tell you this, the guy that got scratched never went back and did this ever again.